Board now, back with you. On this video I will be talking about Season 1, Episode 3 of The Last of Us. It is called Long Time, and full spoilers from the start of this review, I can confidently now call it Season 1 because it has been confirmed this week then has been commissioned for a second season, which is very exciting because I'm really liking the way this is going and it's growing very nicely. It feels very natural, and there's lots of exciting ideas and lots of really good world building which has already been developed in the opening 3 episodes, full of different games to this, so they do have that material to draw from. But one of the best things about this so far, which people have said on both sides, whether you're a big fan of the game, you've played the game, you know it really well, or whether you're just like a casual like me who's never played it and don't know much about it, is this show and the writing has just nailed the way you do this sort of thing, like the adaptation, where they have made like really important changes just to make it work as a TV drama, as a TV series. So the stuff which they've added has really benefited the drama and the storytelling, and it's stuff which they've had to add because you're changing the medium from game to TV. But at the same time, it's still a very faithful adaptation, and it still stays true to the world of the game and many of the ideas and the characters and stuff. From what I've heard, this might be the best of the 3 episodes, which is saying something. This is a really beautiful, moving, heartbreaking episode, which takes a bold direction because the majority of the episode follows like 2 new characters. Basically, it follows the character of Bill, so Nick Offerman, and it follows Frank, and they are characters who we first heard about at the end of last week's episode, and that was when Tess mentioned them. We had like the heroic death and sacrifice of Tess take her to Frank and Bill. That was like part of her dying wish. And it's good storytelling because it starts off with Joel and Ellie and some of the fallout from what happened at the end of the last episode, and then it ends with them arriving at Frank and Bill's. But the meat of the episode is all the stuff in the middle where we get this really humanistic, impressive story about these 2 characters. And we just get to know them over the course of the episode and their relationship and how that all forms. One-shot characters, or at the moment it seems like they're one-shot characters. The longer episode, like this was a good 75 minutes, and I think it's because they wanted the time to really tell this story properly and make it feel convincing and not rush. It's just so engrossed all the way along, jumping about, and we're getting more details about the world and some of what has happened to different people, and also the way different people react to like the virus, and adds more layers as well. But this is impressive, like the way we follow the character of Bill, Nick Offerman's character, where at the start of the episode, or when we first see him, and it's like 2003, he's not really that likeable. Like from the word go, he does feel like a classic Nick Offerman style character. But we see how he's been very smart and very clever in the way he set himself up, and he's someone who has a plan, like a calculated long-term plan, but the consequence of that plan leads him down a certain path which makes him very cut off from the rest of the world and not so open to other things. And that's what's so beautiful about what we see when he meets Frank and their relationship. Slowly opens his eyes to new things and new ideas, and he slowly helps him, to live a bit more of a positive life, because the introduction to Bill is then when things are really going down, he decides to go to the store and get all these supplies. And once again, I think there's a commentary on partly like modern obsession with like guns and weapons, but also just a commentary on like modern tech and how sometimes we box ourselves away with it, because he gets all this gear and he drives away and he drives back home because at the start he's sort of in a different location, and he sets up this really high-tech sort of almost like a lair, because he's got like an electric fence and he's using it so that if people who are infected or people he suspects could be, that they can't get in. And it's just again a very paranoid sort of viewpoint where he, in some ways it's fair enough, but he doesn't want to take any chances. And he's also got these monitors where he can view people, and we sort of see that that's what happens. And what he'll do is if he's like pretty sure someone's infected, because he'll test them first, but once he's convinced they're infected, he'll just shoot them. He's just got like this whole thing set up where he just shoots them. Unlikable, even though you can see why someone might do this, and there's a certain amount of, okay, he was actually quite smart there, and he's thought things out. But over time, I think as things go on, there's definitely a message of, if you keep yourself up for too long, if you rely too much on technology and become too obsessed with guns, then it's going to have negative effects. And that's what happens with Bill, is he does become very withdrawn from the world, very isolated. And there are examples where he just takes his paranoia to the extreme. And that's why Nick Offerman is such great casting, because he is just this classic deadpan, like sort of oddball type personality. Like the performance in Parks and Rec is that. It's just in that it's obviously used to be more comedic. But when you see him in a lot of other things apart from that, like you can do different things with like his sort of like bemused sort of deadpan grizzled sort of like features, and you can go one or two ways. You can either make it quite charming and warm, or you can make it a bit more like sinister, a bit more brooding. So I think that's the good thing about him, and he's really effective in this episode. Frank is just someone who's fallen on hard times and looking for some food, basically, and he has him down in the hole and starts questioning him. And once again, this show does like just little moments of comedy really well, like dark humour in a way, but it just adds a bit more of a lighter feel to some scenes. And there's a really good line from Frank: "What I want is some food." And Bill responds by saying, "The problem is, if I let you have food, then I'm just gonna, every like homeless guy, Tom, Dick and Harry, whatever he says, he has quite a demeaning term, but they're all gonna want the same, and this isn't Arby's. I don't give away free food." And the response from Frank is, "Please don't give away free food. They're a restaurant." So yeah, that doesn't work. But so just that smart little comeback from Frank was really good stuff. And I guess it's a clever sort of character beat because it makes him quite likeable straight away. Job in selling that this isn't just some desperate guy who's maybe just going to use Bill. Like, this seems like a legitimately sort of honest guy. And just watching this unfold is like really impressive. Trees in here, like when they go back to like inside Bill's house and he serves dinner and he's got like fine wine. There's almost this sense that Bill has all this stuff, but like a lot of it he doesn't use, and a lot of it is just almost having stuff for the sake of it. Like he doesn't really appreciate that much, and it just goes a little bit to his character than he's maybe someone who, like, he has survived and he has become like very isolated and solitary, and that's just part of the reason I think why he surrounds himself with stuff. But then the opposite is then when Frank sees it, because books and that, and he has quite the collection, and then he sees, because there's a piano in the room, musical notes on that you can use for a piano, like just from different like operas or plays, so like the Tales of Offerman, for example. And the way this scene unfolds is like really well done, really impressive, because it shows you how Frank is really clever but also sensitive, the way he gets Bill to open up, because Frank starts playing on the piano and starts singing, and Bill, you can see Bill like kind of wincing, and he cuts him off at some point. Trick to get Bill to play the piano and sing and open up. And I'll say this, I'm not sure if it was Nick Offerman's actual voice, but if it was, wow, he can really sing. I thought he had a really good voice, so that was something that was impressive. And it did seem like it was really him singing. It didn't really seem like it was dubbed. Who's the girl you were singing about? And there's a pause, and Bill says, "There's no girl." And Frank's like, "I know." And then they kiss, and it's revealed that they're both homosexual, and they end up going to bed, and that's the start of their relationship. But it's just so beautifully played out over the many years, because another little detail that's revealed is that Bill has never had sex with a man before. Like, when they go to bed, Frank asks him, have you ever done that before? And he says, like, only with a woman a long time ago. And that's just a reveal where I guess it's saying that because he's quite a masculine guy and he's had a certain upbringing, and then we've had all the stuff going on with like the pandemic and all the rest of it, this is a guy who has shut himself away from the world and not engaged with anyone. Structure to the episode where we take leaps of 3 years forward each time with these characters, and it works well, because you need a certain amount of like leaping forward, because it's just a one episode arc with them, but at the same time it means you can look at how they've progressed in like 3 years and how they've changed. Slow change in Bill and Frank introducing things into his life, because when we take a next jump, Frank wants him to change and wants him to like get out and do more, and Frank wants to like decorate the neighborhood or around their house and just interact a bit more with neighbors, because at this point things have moved on, and like Frank sort of feels they're in a position where they can like get out more and interact, and Bill is just very stuck in his ways, in the way he's lived his life, like ever since a certain point. And once again, there's like the odd moment of comedy, which is so well done, like 9/11, where like everyone else out to get you. Bill just shouts back, "The government are all Nazis," and he's like, "Well, yeah, but they weren't. Like, it wasn't all like that back then." And So that's a really funny moment. To a nice woman on the radio is really funny, because once again, the paranoia in Bill is that he doesn't trust anyone, and he just wants to live there with Frank, and that's it. That's their life. But Frank wants more than that. The Tess character and the Joel character, because they have been contacting other people on the radio, like other survivors, build its test that Frank's been talking to on the radio, and then you get a scene a bit later on where they have them over for dinner, and Bill's just being typical like stubborn, awkward sort of Bill, where he actually has a gun on him at one point when they're like at the table, and Tess and Frank are talking and they're getting on really well, and Bill is just being like a real dick to Joel, and Joel tries to connect to him by being brutally honest with him and just laying it all out. Then you need people to help you. You can't do this all by yourself, and put that gun away. And he's very honest and he won't take any crap from him. But Bill is being Bill, really being very stubborn and saying things like, we don't need people like you in our lives. The next jump 3 years forward, we see then over time Bill has learnt to trust Joel and Tess, because they've got the electric fence and it's Joel who he's given the combination to, and he's got things set in place for if something happens to him or Frank or whoever, where he's left the keys out for Joel. He's accepted Joel a bit more, and like they probably are friends. So that's why these jumps of 3 years are like important and quite effective. 3 years, a very happy relationship with Bill and Frank with each other, and we see like at one point they've planted growing and just things are more open, and there's just these little moments with Bill where he's still very set in his way, because he's still talking about guns, because one of the things with that is like, well, did you sell a gun for this? And Frank's like, yeah, but it was just one of the small ones. And we see that with Bill, which is one of the tragic sides, and he just can't let go of the gun thing completely. In this sort of world, why people would have guns and why they feel the need to protect themselves and look out for number one. But at the end of the day, and I think this relates to like the real life pandemic that we had, people do need to get on and live their own lives. At some point you do need to return to some sort of like normality, no matter how bad things are. You can't like sort of live in fear forever. Sometimes you do need to take risks, and I think that's something which Frank is introduced into Bill in this. Bill is a very different character at the end of the episode to the start, and that's a really impressive arc that they do, but he still has that sort of a little bit paranoid where he still feels the need to have a gun around, and I think he's really ill, and they never say what the disease is, but it appears as though it might be something terminal like cancer, which they maybe can't sort of fix, and there's no going back from, but also the situation because of the pandemic and stuff, it doesn't seem like there's any like medical care around that they can use. So Frank has pretty much given up and just says, let's enjoy the time we've got. And Bill's obviously looking after him and doesn't want to lose Frank, so he's more in the mindset of medical care. Let's see if there's something we can do. And Frank, it's not even a negative thing with Frank. It's just like he's accepted his fate and he's in a happy place because he's with the person he loves, and they've had a good relationship over many years, so he's almost content, and he just makes this decision that this is my final day, I'm not going to suffer anymore. So he plans to like end his life at the end of that day with like pills, but he turns this into a positive where he says to Bill, some great times with you, some great times over many years, so just show me a good time, show me one last good time. And that's the way he said it. He says, take me to the diner, buy me breakfast, take me to the boutique, you're gonna dress up in anything I ask you to. And yeah, just different. Let's actually get married, because that's the thing where they've never got married. They've never had the opportunity, and that's something they actually do on that day, and they make a whole day of it. And I think what's really like moving about the sentiment and what he's saying is it's almost like, because he's accepted his fate and that he's probably going to die sooner rather than later, and he's in a happy place with this guy he loves, then it's almost that idea of how you can have a bit more freedom suddenly, knowing your fate and just accepting it, so you can just enjoy like your final day. But the twist is that Bill has decided he's gonna die as well. He puts like enough pills to kill himself in the wine later. Frank doesn't even fight him on it. Like, at first he's taken aback, but once Bill explains, when he says, he has this line about, this isn't like some tragic suicide, this is me, I'm happy, I've lived a good life, like, you are my purpose in life, I'm with the one I love. And when he puts it like that, even though Frank's not 100% with the decision, he still accepts it and says it's romantic. So, and that's it. It's a beautiful like way to these characters leave the world, really, because they go off to bed together one last time, and that's sort of the way it plays out. Ellie and Joel arriving at the house, and they obviously have no idea of this, and this is another reason why I think it's more dramatic and powerful to actually have this stuff play out, because of where it all leads things and changes the context. Ellie finds like the suicide note from Bill, and the keys are there for like the car. Like, Bill just has this really dry, dark sense of humour, which comes across when Ellie starts reading out the note, assuming it's you, Joel, because anyone else would have been fried by my electric fence. And then he does like a laughing thing, which Ellie reads out, which is really funny. So some dark humour. And he's taking little quips, like pot shots at Joel, because he's kind of saying, I still don't really like you, but then later on he says, but I respect you. And it's just like little playful moments of black humour in the letter, and little gags, which definitely feels in character with Bill. So he says in the letter, Bill says, don't go up to the bedroom, I've opened the window so that there's no smell. And that's another thing, is like, whenever they're discovered, I guess. They like, Bill just wants them to that to be a thing where they're just there and no one really discovers them, and they're just, even in death, they're together. She gets to a point in the letter and she starts talking, and she mentions someone who's obviously gonna be Tess, and then she pauses, and that's when Joel starts to really get emotional, and he walks out of the house. And I just like that from Ellie as a character moment, because she's actually grown attached to, like, I mean, she grew attached to Tess, which is why she got upset when they left her last week. Realises then, yeah, Joel cared about Tess. Like, I don't want her upset him. So I like that she took that pause and didn't want to finish the sentence. And so Joel goes outside and he goes in the garage and he finds like the car which Bill has left for him, and he starts charging up the battery, and that's when he comes back inside. Just a couple of rules, and one of them is that you don't mention Tess's name again. You need to know about my personal stuff. We don't need to know about Eva's personal stuff. And then he tells her, I've got a brother in, I think it was Wyoming. So sets up another nice little adventure for next week with them heading to Wyoming. But there's some sweet stuff in this part with like Ellie and Joel, because they start gathering up stuff for the trip, and they see like the base with like the monitors that Bill had set up, and like Ellie's like really like impressed. She's like, "Wow, this guy was really smart." And there's just some nice moments of her and Joel starting to bond, even though it's still a very tense thing, and that's something we see at the start of the episode. Devastated by losing Tess, and he still is very reluctant when it comes to helping Ellie. Like, they still don't have that real bond yet, which is assumably going to happen over time. Relationship form very naturally with Bill and Frank, and Ellie and Joel are obviously in a very different place. So that's another nice little like contrast. But one good line from Ellie in the episode, which is in the first bit before we jump to the Bill stuff, right bluntly, she just says, like, it was your decision to go on this mission, you and Tess's decision, because you wanted like a car or a car battery or whatever. So don't blame me for something that wasn't my fault. And that's something where you're like, kind of, yeah, she's got a point, you know, this was a decision you made, Joel, like, you didn't have to. So she's just, in a way, like a pawn stuck in the middle of this thing. Like, it wasn't really her fault what happened to Tess, but at the same time, yeah, there's a lot of sympathy for Joel, and that's partly what motivates him later when we see him say what he says to Ellie, because he's telling her then, based on some of her comments and some of her prodding type thing, that no, this is off bounds. You don't talk about Tess. You don't mention it again. We ending actually because they start driving away, and he puts on like the radio or like a CD, whatever it is, and it's like Linda Ronstadt on the radio and playing, and he has a moment, I guess, because he's like a really big fan, but possibly because of all the years of the pandemic, like he hasn't heard this song for a very long time, so he starts getting nostalgic for it. And Ellie just takes this look, and because she's a much younger character, she's not familiar with this song, and she just has a cheeky smile and says, "Yeah, I guess it's not bad. I like it. It's better than nothing." Something like that. And it's just this cute little moment where Joel smiles and they sort of enjoy the song together and drive on. So that's a really nice way to end the episode. But fantastic stuff, and like, I absolutely loved this episode, and I do think this is the best of the three, even though the first two were really great episodes as well. So that's the week. The third episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media, and I'll be back soon with more TV reviews. See you later, guys.